Okay, let's unpack this. How many of us have started January 1st with just a huge list of resolutions? Maybe a grand plan to completely overhaul our diet or launch into some brand new, really complex productivity system. I know I have, usually with a freshly purchased notebook and this completely unshakable belief that this time, yeah, this time will be different. And then, well, often by February, maybe even sooner, that ambitious list is kind of gathering dust. And the notebook, half empty, it's that familiar sting, isn't it? Ambition fizzling out, leaving this quiet little ember of guilt. I think we've all been there. We aim for these monumental shifts, and then, well, life just kind of happens. But what if? What if genuine, lasting transformation didn't actually demand monumental effort? What if instead it really hinged on tiny, almost ridiculously small, consistent actions? That's the core idea of what we're diving into today, the 5-minute reset.
Yeah.
It's this really powerful idea suggesting that the secret to boosting your focus, your energy, maybe even your happiness, well, it might just be nestled within those small, low-friction windows of time.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here is how two really different sources, one a published guide, the other a very personal, real-world account, they both seem to converge on this powerful yet kind of counterintuitive truth. Our deep dive today is mostly guided by William Watson's ebook, The 5-Minute Reset: Tiny Daily Habits to Boost Your Focus, Energy, and Happiness in Just Minutes a Day. And we're pairing that with an incredibly relatable lived experience from a Reddit user, shared in the Digit Discipline community. Both of them, really, in their own way, underscore this idea that massive change actually starts with tiny actions. So for you, our listener, maybe you're navigating a really demanding schedule, perhaps feeling a bit overwhelmed, or just, pulled in way too many directions. Our mission with this deep dive is to offer a more direct path. We want to show you how you can cultivate sustainable habits. Habits that genuinely enhance your focus, elevate your energy, and yes, increase your happiness. And the promise is pretty bold. Real results without stress, burnout, or complicated routines.
Real results without stress. I mean, that sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it? But the book makes a really compelling case for why our big, audacious goals often fall flat. And here's where it gets really interesting for me. It's not you, it's the strategy. I think so many of us tend to blame, well, a lack of willpower when we can't stick to a new routine. But Watson's core argument gets at something else entirely. What does he say is the actual culprit behind our grand plans failing?
Right? Watson argues it's a failure of strategy, definitely not a personal failing. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, how our brains are wired, it actually makes perfect sense. Our brains are incredibly efficient machines. And above all, they prioritize safety. So when we propose these drastic, like overnight changes, maybe going from zero exercise to suddenly an hour at the gym every single day, our brain often perceives this massive shift as, well, a threat. It triggers our innate resistance. It's kind of like an internal alarm system telling us, whoa, stick to what's known and safe. This psychological friction makes it incredibly difficult to override. And that leads to that feeling of lack of willpower when really it's our own biology working against a, frankly, flawed approach. The book sums it up nicely. The all-or-nothing approach almost always ends with nothing.
Okay, so if trying to scale Mount Everest in like a single leap really works, what's the path forward then? Watson introduces this concept of the micro habit. Can you maybe elaborate on what exactly he means by that and why it bypasses this natural resistance you mentioned?
Sure. A microhabit, as he defines it, is an action so tiny, so infinitesimally small, it feels almost effortless. He literally says it's easier to do it than to talk yourself out of it. And the genius here really lies in that super low barrier to entry. Because the action is so trivial, it just doesn't trigger that threat response in your brain we talked about. There's hardly any cognitive load, no sense of overwhelm. For example, instead of committing to reading a whole chapter of a book, you might just commit to reading, say, one paragraph. Or instead of a complex morning routine with 10 steps, you simply make your bed. That's it. It's about choosing a starting point that's so easy, you almost can't not do it.
And there's actual science to these quick wins too, right? Which I find fascinating. Every time you successfully complete one of these micro habits, even one that seems, well, insignificant, your brain releases a small hit of dopamine. That's our body's natural feel-good chemical, right? Our neurotransmitter for reward. It creates this really powerful positive feedback loop. For instance, the book suggests instead of a 30-minute meditation session, which can feel huge, you just take 3 deliberate deep breaths. Or instead of committing to a grueling 1-hour workout, maybe you just do 5 minutes of stretching right by your desk. See how that just feels inherently, well, unintimidating and definitely achievable.
Exactly. Your brain registers that quick win and basically says, hey, that felt good. And you know what? It was easy. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
This isn't just about feeling momentarily good, though. It's really the biological foundation for building momentum. And that's particularly crucial when you're battling burnout or maybe feeling consistently overwhelmed. These consistent small dopamine hits gradually start to rewire your brain. They make it seek out and even crave more of those successes. It literally trains your brain become a habit-forming machine, but in a gentle way.
And the magic number in all of this, the real sweet spot, according to the book, is 5 minutes. Watson really emphasizes why 5 minutes is the perfect unit of change. What is it about that specific duration that makes it so potent?
Well, 5 minutes is brilliant because it's short enough to completely bypass that initial resistance we talked about. It's easily manageable, even on your most chaotic, absolutely packed days, and it just feels psychologically safe. You can dedicate just 5 minutes to almost anything without it completely disrupting your entire schedule or feeling totally drained afterwards. It sets up an environment where success is almost inevitable, and that guarantees that crucial first dopamine hit we need. It's really about making engagement the path of least resistance.
That really highlights how strategic this whole approach is. It's focusing on, like, inevitability rather than just sheer willpower. So, okay, how do we actually apply this 5 minute philosophy in our daily lives? The ebook, The 5 Minute Reset, provides this a whole toolkit of these tiny actions, right? Like a practical blueprint for leveraging these small pockets of time to actually shift your daily experience. It breaks them down into categories, which I think makes it really accessible. You can target specific areas of your life where you want to see improvement.
Yeah, like for focus and mental clarity, it suggests things like a 5 minute brain dump, just getting all those swirling thoughts out onto paper. Or the one focus rule, where you commit to working on just one single priority task for only 5 minutes, no distractions. It sounds so simple, but I know personally, even just 5 minutes of dedicated focus can be a total game changer when I'm feeling scattered. And what about for energy and health? It mentions things like a morning movement ritual, maybe a few stretches or a quick walk around the block, or even a 5 minute hydration hack just to make sure you're drinking water consistently through the day.
Tiny things.
Absolutely. And extending that into the realm of happiness and stress relief, the book offers ideas like gratitude in 60 seconds, just taking a minute to genuinely appreciate maybe 3 things, or the micro-journaling method, simply jotting down a single sentence about your day. And these aren't just, fluffy feel-good suggestions. They're actually science-backed methods designed to cultivate positive mental states, but without demanding significant time. But okay, this raises a really important question for many of us, I think. How do we actually make these new tiny habits stick? How do we build true lasting momentum over time? Because that's often the sticking point, isn't it? Getting past week 1 or 2.
That is the perennial challenge, isn't it? We've all started strong only to kind of fade out. What's maybe the biggest misconception Watson addresses about sticking power when it comes to these micro habits? And how does his framework help us overcome that specific hurdle?
Well, the big misconception is often that consistency requires massive amounts of willpower or perfect conditions every day, which is just unrealistic. Watson's strategies for making it stick are actually twofold and quite clever, I think. First, he really emphasizes habit stacking. This is all about attaching a new micro habit to an existing, already established routine. So, for example, immediately after you brush your teeth, something you probably do on autopilot, you might do those 3 deep breaths. You're basically leveraging a habit you already do, which dramatically reduces the friction of remembering or initiating the new one. The second strategy he outlines is his 30-day reset challenge. It's a phased approach that starts with extremely quick daily actions and then builds gradually with weekly check-ins. It's really designed to build that life-changing momentum by ensuring you actually do the habit every single day, no matter what, even if it's the tiniest version.
Right. It's that consistent doing that really seems to change things. But let's bring this to life with a real-world example, because sometimes seeing it in action makes all the difference, Imagine, just for a moment, having tried literally every productivity system under the sun. You've got notebooks full of half-finished trackers, abandoned apps, the whole 9 yards. Our Reddit user, whose story we found in Dirge Discipline, describes exactly this struggle: constant searching, constant failing. And they found their breakthrough not with some complex high-tech system, but with something they called an embarrassingly simple 5-minute morning reset. And that one finally stuck.
Yeah, their account is incredibly relatable. It's really a testament to the power of simplicity. After countless failed attempts to implement these grand, ambitious morning routines, they finally landed on this 5-step ritual. It was so small, they just couldn't justify skipping it. And looking back, each step beautifully aligns with Watson's principles: low friction, high reward. Let's walk through them quickly. 1. Writing down their top 3 outcomes for the day. Not just tasks, notice, but real desired results. That gives immediate clarity, intention, a small win for focus right there.
Okay, yeah, outcomes, not tasks. That's a good distinction.
2. Noting any blockers and the very first action to clear them. I mean, how often do we just plow ahead without even acknowledging the obvious tripwires, right? This step preemptively removes resistance and gives a clear, tiny first move. Very practical.
Yeah, that makes sense. Proactive.
3. Scheduling one deep work block, even if it's only 45 minutes. Again, this isn't about perfection. It's about dedicated, undistracted focus. Even a short block trains the brain to engage deeply. 4. Logging yesterday's wins and failures in a single line each. Okay, this is where the dopamine magic really seems to happen. Acknowledging progress, even tiny progress, provides that crucial positive feedback.
Okay.
And acknowledging failures briefly, without judgment, just helps refine the process for next time.
That tracking piece seems key.
And finally, step 5, a quick glance at their notes system. Just a rapid check to ensure nothing slipped through the cracks. It offers a sense of control, organization, but without demanding some lengthy, time-consuming review. Quick and done.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you, the listener? And why did this specific, embarrassingly simple routine finally work after all this complex systems failed this person? The Reddit user's most powerful insight, I think, was that their logs of those single lines of wins and failures, they actually became fuel for discipline. After just a few weeks, they could literally flip back and see this solid, unbroken chain of successful days. That visible consistency created this internal pressure, a positive pressure, to keep going. Like, if they'd stuck with it for 3 weeks, why not add one more day? It genuinely transformed into a streak they just didn't want to break.
This is such a perfect real-world illustration of the book's principle of dopamine and quick wins in action. And it culminates in true momentum. The cumulative effect of these small, tracked actions actually begins to rewire your brain. It makes the act of doing less about, brute force willpower and much more about a self-sustaining cycle. The user explicitly says that this routine built more consistency than any perfect productivity hack. And crucially, it made discipline feel less like willpower, more like momentum. That visual chain of successful days provided an intrinsic reward, propelling them forward, exactly as Watson describes in the book. It really transforms discipline from feeling like a chore into maybe a game you actually want to keep winning.
It's fascinating, isn't it? How that immediate, tangible feedback, that sense of progress, becomes the real engine of the system. You're no longer relying on some abstract idea of discipline. You're actually seeing the concrete results of your tiny efforts accumulating day after day. It feels like a fundamental shift in perspective.
Absolutely. And this shows us that discipline can feel less like this grueling battle against yourself and more like a self-sustaining force. The momentum generated by these tiny, consistent successes just propels you forward. It makes it easier to engage even on those tough mornings when, let's be honest, motivation is low for everyone sometimes. It's really about leveraging our natural psychological tendencies rather than constantly fighting against them.
So just to recap our deep dive today. Meaningful, lasting change, it seems, doesn't really come from those giant, overwhelming leaps we often plan for. It comes from small, consistent steps. We've seen how grand resolutions often fail, not because of a personal lack of willpower, but often due to failure of strategy. And how embracing micro habits and the strategic power of these 5-minute resets can genuinely start to rewire your brain for success. It can give you real results, but without all the stress, the burnout, or the complicated routines we often fall back on and then abandon. So we really encourage you to think about it. What tiny, low-friction, maybe 5-minute action could you implement in your own day? Starting right now, perhaps? Something to boost your focus, maybe elevate your energy, or just increase your happiness a little bit. Choose something so easy, it's almost silly not to do it.
Yeah, and maybe a final thought to leave you with. If a mere 5 minutes applied consistently can actually initiate such significant internal and external shifts, what other overlooked, seemingly insignificant moments in your day might hold that same kind of untapped potential for profound personal transformation? It's a powerful thought, I think, to carry forward into your week.